Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. So, when those who believed in Christ believed in him, then they died with him. And therefore they were released from the law. Therefore now they could marry another. But while they were still alive, they could not marry Christ. Meanwhile, Christ himself cannot marry them while his first wife is still alive. He is bound by the law. This is why in Matthew chapter 5 it says, until heaven and earth pass away, not a single minute detail of the law can pass away. So Christ cannot marry his new wife because he is still under law. He is still bound by the law. She is still alive. And while she lives, he cannot marry his new wife, whom he has betrothed, whom he has wooed. So therefore, the judgment of Revelation all the chapters of Revelation really are about the judgment of the prostitute, Old Covenant Israel, who was the prostitute who had cheated on God, who had killed God's children, who had killed God's servants. Matthew chapter number 23. This is a good time to begin to ask questions because I'm winding up this one. What I wanted to show, and I know I've gone in the back channels to show this, is that the church is God's promised wife on earth forever. She is not God's promised wife for heaven. And on the earth, in the New Jerusalem, in Revelation 21, Isaiah 54, she has enemies going forward. They can raise strife with her. They will fall because of her. So this is not some utopian idea in Revelation 21. There are enemies. They are outside. Watch this. In Matthew 23, Jesus is teaching, and he says concerning Jerusalem, I'm going to pick it up at verse number, let me just pick it up at verse number 29. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees. Remember, these are the stewards of Old Covenant Jerusalem. Hypocrites, you build tombs of the prophets, you decorate monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus, you witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers. Fill up then the measure of your fathers. Do like your fathers did. Remember, this is during Jesus' lifetime. This is the last week of Jesus' life. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how you were to escape being sentenced to hell. So hell is coming. Therefore, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. So Jesus says that the judgment for all the blood shed on earth since Abel was to take place in the generation of the Pharisees. Now watch what he says next. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, but you are not willing. He's speaking to his first wife, Jerusalem. I would have gathered your children. I would have saved your children, but you have rejected me as your husband. You have refused me. Therefore, your house, woman, is left to you desolate. So Jesus declares the desolation of Jerusalem in Matthew 23. And he says it's going to happen within a generation. Then immediately you come into Matthew 24. As Jesus left the temple, he said this inside the temple. He declared to the woman at the temple. He declared to his first wife, who has rejected him, who has refused for him to gather up her children into salvation. He leaves that woman. He is going away from her. When his disciples come to point out to him the buildings of the temple, in Luke 21, he says how beautifully they were adorned according to all covenant standards. But he answered, you see all this, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. In other words, he's saying, you see this wife? See this woman? It's my first wife. Done for. Finished. Done for. She has rejected me. She has rejected my entities. She has rejected my blood. Yet she's the one who cheated on me. She's the one who killed my children. I will bring judgment upon her. She will die within a generation. She will die. So that I can marry a new wife who is willing to be faithful to me, who is willing to bear children of faithfulness for me. Now, if Jesus is not yet married to his wife today, then Jesus has been having premarital sex with his wife and bearing millions, up to 2 billion children now. How many of you imagine that Jesus has been having children with his fiancée for 2,000 years? How many of you would love to say, yeah, Jesus has been having children with his fiancée who is not married to for 2,000 years? That's what is being taught. No. Jesus married his wife at the moment the old one died, and from that moment onwards, he could now legally produce children under a new covenant. That's what he's doing. That's what he will always do. So, Aaron asks this very important. Is this why Jesus could not go to the Gentiles, the lost sheep, but the lost sheep, because it would have been looked at as adultery? I've never thought about that question that way, Aaron. So give me a moment to think about it. I don't believe that that is the reason. The reason is this. It's not so much about adultery with Jesus. The reason, first of all, is the order of God. Because if you have a wife and you are separated, right? If you have a wife and you're separated, and so there is a truth to what you're saying. If you have a wife and you're separated, the law is, first of all, go and woo her back, the wife that you're separated with. So 1 Corinthians, maybe I should open on another thing. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 says this way. 1 Corinthians 7. Where you are? There you go. So very good question, by the way. That's an excellent question. To the married, I give this charge, not I, but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, she should remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. So Jesus, when he comes, because he's here to fulfill the promises of God to all covenant Israel, he must first of all allure her, the first wife. He must allure her first. Then, when he allures her, how does he allure her? He allures her by saying, look, I'm back. I want us to be in relationship. Look at what I'm about to do for you. I'm about to die for you. So he dies for her to make a new covenant. So there is a truth to what you're saying, Aaron, that if Jesus had gone to the Gentiles during his lifetime, then he would be wooing another girl while he has another wife. But the moment he dies for her, first of all, he is released from that marriage himself because he is dead. When he rises as another person. He has a death certificate. So now he can begin wooing a new wife because there's a new covenant being made. There's a new betrothal agreement. The old wife has a grace period to sign the divorce papers or to come back home and be joined to the new wife. She refuses. In fact, she goes on doing what she had been doing. He goes on killing the servants of their husband. She goes on committing more adultery, so that now her judgment at the end of that grace period is well earned and well deserved. That's an excellent question, Brother Aaron. I'd never even thought about that question before. So, futurists love to claim to be in covenant while denying the wedding. How can you be in the covenant if there is no wedding? Because Jesus establishes the covenant at the cross. Yes. But the covenant at the cross is a betrothal. The covenant at the cross is not a marriage. It's a betrothal. You have to get to the wedding in order for the marriage to be consummated. Otherwise, she is not his wife. She is just his fiancée, his girlfriend, as it were. So, now, but here's the important thing. Old covenant Israel was what was promised, a remarriage by God. So there are enough passages in the Old Testament. I will remarry you. I will marry you. Those promises were made to old covenant Israel. Jesus therefore comes to old covenant Israel to offer her a new covenant of marriage, a renewal of vows. He lays down his life as his bride price. But he gives her one generation to either accept or decline. And at the end of that period, the divorce will be final. There will be a court case. There will be a lawsuit. There will be a sentence. There will be a judgment to the prostitute, to the whore. And that's what happens in 70 AD. And what happens right after the judgment? So again, I take you back to Revelation 19. Maybe I should just begin, because I just read Matthew 23. Let's begin at the end. Remember how in Matthew 23, let me bring this back up. I want to show you something here once again. Please bear with me. Please bear with me. Look at what Jesus says here in Matthew 23. He's talking to the Pharisees, right? To the scribes. He says, if you had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers. Now watch this. In Revelation 18, where we are told, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. Do you see the three categories? Beasts, birds, and these demons are representative of the creeping things. So demons, unclean birds, detestable beasts. The same categories, because they have now gone against the law, so they have become unclean. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual morality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her. And the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. Now watch this. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others. Repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. So in Matthew 23, he says, fill up then the measure of your fathers. In Revelation 18, he says, her sins are heaped. The measure has been reached. Pay her back as she paid others. Repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, give her a like measure of torment and mourning. since she says in her